Following President Biden's decision to drop out of the 2024 presidential race, a lot of questions have been raised.
They certainly have. As the Democratic Party decides what's next, some members of the Republican Party are questioning what's happening right now.
News 19's Roger Staffaroni has local reaction and some analysis.
We haven't seen a situation like this since 1968. That's the last time an incumbent president who was eligible to run for re-election declined to do so.
That was the case for President Lyndon Johnson, opting out of being the Democratic nominee. That nod would go to then Vice President Hubert Humphrey, who would lose to Republican candidate Richard M. Nixon. 56 years later, Democratic President Joe Biden has decided to drop out of the race for re-election.
He decided to not run. And of course, it was his decision. I like to be really clear about that. There was no power on earth that could have forced Biden to step down. The delegates were his. They were pledged to him. It was his decision and his alone.
The question for some, can you do that? Just decide to withdraw from the election?
No legal concerns at all. Legally, the nominee is not the nominee until they are elected at the convention.
That convention taking place next month in Chicago. But some members of the Republican Party are voicing their concerns, questioning President Biden's decision as well as his abilities and whether or not he should remain in office one more day.
So I take no pleasure in this at all. But we have to understand that the cognitive decline of the president cannot be disputed at this point. And him announcing that he's not going to run for re-election is just the most recent and public example that he is incapable of holding office.
Representative Van Orden goes so far as to say Vice President Kamala Harris's priority right now should be to finish out President Biden's current term.
Invoke the 25th Amendment and remove President Biden from office, meaning that she needs to be the acting president of the United States because clearly he is incapable of doing so.
Professor Chergosky doesn't see a need to invoke the 25th Amendment, but he does believe that there needs to be an explanation of why and why now the decision not to run, and who needs to explain that.
I think it's going to be on Joe Biden to explain his reasoning for why he will serve out the rest of his term, but not run for re-election.
In La Crosse, Roger Staffaroni, WXOW News 19.
The last time the 25th Amendment was discussed was as recently as January of 2021.
And that's when members of both parties called for then President Donald J. Trump to be removed from office following the January 6th insurrection, even though there were only 13 days remaining in his term.